Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Catherine.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, I'm so honored to talk to you for so many reasons. And for those of you that don't know, I've been following Andrea on her blog for years. And the thing that keeps me coming back is how honest, authentic, vulnerable, courageous Andrea is in her sharing of what's really going on. Not just the details of the external stuff of what's going on, but what's happening underneath the surface. And she does it in such a way, I'm speaking about you as if you're not here, Andrea, I'm sorry.
I'll go out of the frame for a minute.
The thing that really inspires me about you is that it encourages me to do the same and really see where I'm maybe wearing a mask or not sharing the whole story out of fear of what others might think. And when you share it, all I see reflected back is a bunch of people who have had a similar experience saying, me too.
Yeah.
I'm right with you, babe.
Yeah, I think I'm starting with an assumption that my experience is your experience, and I'm assuming that I'm not alone ahead of time, and then it's being confirmed for me, and I'm like, phew, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think for me, when I started writing on the blog, well, actually, I was a wedding photographer when I started putting myself online, and I felt like I needed to present myself in a certain professional way so that people would trust me. And what I'm seeing now is that the more that I reveal myself, the more people trust me. It's
exactly.
the opposite.
Yes, you create so much goodwill when you are willing to put something on the line and be vulnerable. Yeah. There's so much power in it too. It's such a, I don't know if it's a paradox or it's just like it's like counterintuitive, but the more we're willing to be vulnerable, it requires so much courage that actually it creates so much respect and goodwill and trust in your clients and the people that you serve. And there's a way to do it powerfully that's not like, bleh, I'm just like gonna let it all hang out, right? I think that's an interesting topic too. I think there's a way to do it with grace and with truth and with power.
What is the difference for you? I think that's a really important piece, and I'd like to dive into it just a bit about what is the difference between just sharing all of it for the sake of sharing it and being a little dramatic about it and look at me and all of that, to holding a space for yourself of being vulnerable and as a way to connect with others. What is that fine line?
It's a great question, and I think it probably starts with, what are your intentions? Like, am I wanting to get approval or manipulate, or am I wanting to serve? Am I wanting to be generous? So I think that you have to maybe examine your intentions first. And for me, I'm always asking, okay, what's universal in this story? What am I really talking about? And that helps me know if I'm being of service or not. Like, if I'm gossiping, or if I'm trying to make myself right, or I'm trying to do something that's a little unclean, then it's like, okay, maybe that's not the story I want to tell.
Yeah.
Maybe, and then also it's like, if you're truly being vulnerable and telling the truth, then I think it just naturally serves the people that we connect with.
It's really true, and I know I can say from being a reader, a follower, that it really has inspired me to be a better version of myself, and not and to practice what it's like to be more revealing instead of trying to be perfect. I'm perfect over here.
Yeah,
look exactly. At my brand, isn't it pretty?
Yeah.
What's behind the brand? What is happening when I'm not at my computer writing a blog post and I have dishes on, we could talk about the chaos that happens behind the scenes, or just for the veneer. It's interesting how you have found a way really to even create courses around this. I mean, the act of being courageous, the act of trusting the universe and allowing those big dreams to actualize in your life and to not be afraid to say them out loud, and how to play more. All of these things, I think, come from your need for it yourself, not because I've arrived and I'm courageous and now,
Exactly, exactly. I mean, people always say, oh, we teach what we most need to learn. And I think it's really true. If there's a topic that I'm teaching that doesn't have that kind of juice for me anymore, if it's not like part of my own learning edge, then it's probably not that interesting to me. And I'm probably, not going to engage with that material anymore. Maybe it's
Right.
like something that's done for me.
That makes a lot of sense, that if you're not actually working through it yourself on some degree, or you're not curious about that topic, then
Okay.
you're not going to be the best at leading another group of women through that process either. So,
Exactly.
and it brings me to a blog post that I read of yours, and I'd love you to share this story. It's around when I think it was Squam, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you did write a blog post, and it was one of the first times. I mean, it's so visual for me. I see the pictures that you posted, and it was years ago, and I remember it as if it was a post you wrote last week. But it was very vulnerable, and where you shared you were teaching the next morning, and you were actually physically ill about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was wondering if you could share that story, and why did you decide during the process of teaching to actually say, I'm scared out of my mind to be in that role?
Mm. Okay, so this is the beginning. What you're talking about is the beginning of a really long story about vulnerability and about panic attacks and anxiety, and it's been kind of a journey, but it did start at Squam at this art retreat, and it really blindsided me because when I was asked to teach, it was this really easy yes, like, oh, of course, no problem. And I was nervous, but I felt like it was like the natural kind of nervousness, no big deal. And then I noticed even on the flight over to New Hampshire, I could tell my body was getting more jacked up. Mm-hmm. And by the time it was the night before I was going to start this 3 days of teaching, I went into full-blown panic attack mode, and I'd never had panic attacks, so I didn't know what was happening. It was a very physical response. And the mistake that I made, actually, was pretending that it wasn't happening the next morning. And this was partly because other people were urging me, like, you're going to be fine, you can do this. I think they felt like they were championing me, like, don't worry, you're just pretend that you're okay, like, fake it till you make it. Yeah. You'll be fine. But my intuition and what I was saying was like, I think I just need to tell them what happened last night and what's going on for me, and that's how I can release it and just be present and not be literally faking it. So I faked it for 3 days and I was in so much physical distress, but I pulled it off. But then it really shattered me. I mean, I came home a shattered person in a way that I'd never experienced. And it took me years. I think it took me like 2 years to heal from it, actually. So anyway, there's that story, and then there's been my journey with, okay, what's that about? What is this like full fight and flight mode that my body goes into when I'm being vulnerable in that particular way? Mm-hmm. And I think, I mean, I know from like cognitive behavioral therapy, which is, in this case, I did some of that by going to something called speaking circles. It's kind of, I don't know if it may be like Toastmasters or something, where you do public speaking in front of a group of people. And in this particular setting, you can't rehearse anything. You can't even think about what you want to talk about ahead of time. You just have to stand up in front of these group of people and do a 3-minute talk and then a 7-minute talk. Wow. And about whatever comes to mind. And it's a lot about just feeling whatever is showing up in your body, whether that's terror, whether your palms are sweating or your heart's beating really fast, and understanding that you can survive it and it's okay to feel that way. So I think that's kind of a microcosm of what we're talking about. Yeah. It's like giving ourselves permission to just be where we're at and share from that place. Right. And that's where the real power and gift is for other people. And I know for a fact that if I had done that the first day of that retreat and said, okay, you guys, this is what's going on for me. I don't know if I can even teach this class with you today, but I promise to be present with you and share what's actually going on for me. Maybe some people would have left because they're like, I came for photography. I didn't come for, this. But I think that would have been the teaching moment, and that would have been the gift of the whole thing.
But actually you did provide that through the blog post itself. I mean, I think, and a lot of those people did read that, and I think commented on it after the fact. But I can see how I was just having my own process as you were talking about yours, because I just started leading retreats too, and I called you right after my first one because I had the same problem where I was sitting in front of people. I felt like I was an imposter and they were going to find me out, and then I really didn't have anything to share. And I was like, my heart was just pounding and my hands were sweaty and all that stuff was happening the whole time. And so I was half in my body, half relating to what I thought maybe people were projecting towards me, because I was hypersensitive. Like, so many layers of things were happening. Yeah. And then I just witnessed, like, what would it be like if I sat in a circle and opened it up with, this is what I'm really feeling right now, and go around the room and have everybody do the same. Like, what?
Exactly.
An opening, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. And so now I know that the last time I think you did a live workshop-ish thing was when you did something at the World Domination Summit last year. Is that correct? Yeah. And I had panic attacks before I did it. I remember talking to you about that.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, how it's evolved, what you've decided as a result, if anything, what that experience was like for you, and what are your thoughts on this last experience?
Yeah. So the last time I said yes to doing an event was, like you said, a World Domination Summit. And it was a really informal breakout session, 30 people, a conversation. I thought I had mapped it out so that it was really minimal stress. And my body still really violently reacted to it. And I just thought, it isn't worth it. I'm just going to say no from now on. I'm just never going to do this stuff again. And really gave myself permission to say no forevermore. But what started happening is that that event in July really kicked in a series of more anxiety and more panic attacks just in my regular life, totally unaffiliated with speaking engagements and stuff. And according to my doctor, it's like your brain has this conditioned response now, and it keeps wanting to do that over and over again.
Interesting.
So she said, I know you're resistant to taking medication, but you might want to head this off at the pass and stop letting your brain do this over and over again. And so I started taking an antidepressant that is for anxiety, and it's been really fascinating. I mean, I'm talking to you right now, and this would have kept me up last night in my, before the medication. It would have kept me up at night. I would feel like I'm actually, if you look at my hands right now, I'm not shaking. I just feel really grounded and in my skin, and I feel like myself. And I think, oh my God, has this been this really kind of physical thing for me? I mean, I've done my work. I've done my soul work around this. I've done my, actual skill building around getting in front of people. I've done so much work, so much therapy. And then I'm realizing now, oh, actually my body now isn't in fight flight, and I can be more of who I am, and I can be a better version of myself now. And
now I feel like there's so much time and energy put on managing that energy that comes up for you, and now you can you can fuel it into your creativity instead of trying to not feel those feelings or try to manage it or work it out or process or whatever it is. Now it's just giving you an opportunity to be in the world and experience it from another calmer place. What a gift.
Yeah, exactly. And of course that spills into the rest of my life. I can be at a crowded grocery store now, and I don't freak out. I've spent like an hour in IKEA shopping. What a big commitment that is.
Yes.
And completely abandoned my cart at the checkout because I got so overwhelmed by the line and the intensity, and freaked out and left into a full cart there. So there's really normal, everyday things that I feel like, wow, I'm so chilled out now. It's awesome. It's been really great.
Well, and I also noticed it just with this interview, because I've interviewed you once before, and I had a very different experience this time with you, and I'll just share it really quickly, is that I thought we were going to have a phone conversation today just to chat because you had a blog post that really moved me and I wanted to know more about that experience. And I said, I also have this TV series that I'm starting, and if you're interested, we could do that also at some other time. But you said, let's do it. Let's do it on video. And I was like,
yeah,
who am I talking to?
I know, right? It's like a miracle.
Yeah, yeah. And
no, it is. It's like a miracle. It's great.
Yeah, it is. And I relate to you in a lot of ways. And I was on medication right after college, and then I was off, and then I was on, and then I was off. And I've noticed the difference when I'm on and when I'm off. And right now I'm off. And I get nervous before every interview. And so it's just interesting for me to experiment with what life is like with it, without it. Is it right? Is it a diagnosed thing, or is it circumstantial? What, just figuring it all out for myself and really being honest and giving myself permission, like you said, to try something different, do a contrary action to what I think my holistic, green, do everything with vegan food and green juice, maybe medication might be necessary, it might not. And figuring out what's true for me and actually saying it out loud, because there's such a stigma around it, like somehow, I don't know, we're going to be judged for it. I don't know. I think that when you wrote the blog post about deciding to be on medication and just saying it out loud, that's why I wanted to call you, because I just thought, girl, you took it to a whole nother level, because our society has certain ideas about what's okay to share and what's not okay to share. And you just said the thing that we're not supposed to say, It's like...
And I didn't die.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of support. And I was thinking about... I've been thinking about the work that you do with fear, like on fear and living a fearless life. And I've been thinking about my own work with courage and my Cultivating Courage class. And so I was asking myself today, okay, what are the things that give me more courage? And one of the things is being really transparent. And if there's any inkling of like having shame around something like the medication, for example, really standing for, I'm not alone in this, and I'm going to prove it to myself. That was part of the reason I shared it. It felt brave, and I shared it first in my courage class, like in the safety of that container. And it was just such a touching experience to do that. And I thought, this is something that more people actually need to hear and need permission around. So I've learned over and over, and now it feels like it's just a normal thing that I do. But so that's one of the ways that I can grow my courage is to not be, I guess it's like a shame thing. Like if I think about Brené Brown work with shame resilience, it's like she says that shame can't survive when empathy is present. And that's what happens. What I've learned every time I share something intimate on my blog, I'm met with so much compassion and empathy that if I was even thinking about being ashamed, it's just like not even possible.
Yeah. And I think also what else happens is that I know for myself, I'm more encouraged and more interested to lean in and take your course or show up and hear you speak, because I still hold you up as somebody who's wise and a teacher. That has not changed. If anything, in my mind, it's broadened that for me, or made it even more apparent that you are a teacher and a source where I can learn something from and get inspiration from, instead of like, oh, she's not perfect. She doesn't
perfect.
Yeah. I think that when we start building a business, there's this sort of idea. I don't know where we got that from, the image of perfection, but I think it exists for us in many different ways. And when we put our business out there or ourselves out there, we do, even at preschool, when we meet the other moms, like there's all this stuff happening.
Yeah, exactly. I know there's so much projection of perfection. Like if you're not doing it like as a business person and trying to project perfection into your little universe, then we just automatically project it. I mean, I think people... I don't know why we do that. I mean, I think we just assume that other people have got it going on and we don't. I'm not sure why, but But I love just bringing it down to this really human level, and I love that people can hold that, at least the people that I attract can hold that with me, and like you say, still see me as a powerful storyteller, healer, teacher. I'm so gratified by that. There's probably people out there that be like, I don't, she's not perfect, I don't want to go near that. Maybe not. But
I think that the more you're transparent, at least what I find is that the more we are ourselves, then we're attracting the people that we really want to be speaking to anyway, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's not about the numbers. It's about really having the soulful tribe, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I want to touch on a couple other things because Mondo Biondo, I think, was the first thing that I took of yours. And it was right after I had Max. And I was thinking about getting back into a business of a creative kind of business, and I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. And Mondo Biondo was just so enticing because it talked about sharing those dreams that you don't share with anyone else, maybe not even with yourself completely.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's about stating them in community or to yourself in some bigger way and allowing the universe to help you. And it's the same. It's almost like mirroring how you are on your blog, where you actually share openly what's really happening, and then you get back such amazing feedback. It's like saying to the universe, you know what I really want?
Yeah, exactly.
And I know that you have a lot of stories about how when you say something out loud, it's actualized in your life in ways that you never thought possible, or even bigger, or taking you on a road that you didn't know existed until you actually wrote it down. And whatever ritual that you...
My computer went black. Okay, I'm back.
I see you. Whatever ritual that you did started you on, like, noticing things. And I'd love you to talk about that specific act, if you could. And I say Ben Harper because I know there was a big thing happened there too, if you want to talk about that. But whatever story.
Sure, yeah. Well, I'm remembering where I really got started with manifesting by like make a list and make it real kind of thing was so let's see, how did it go? So I was living in Santa Barbara and I wanted to move to San Francisco, and I had a dear friend and he was already living in San Francisco, and he said, okay, I'm gonna look for an apartment for us, and then when I find it, then you can move here. And so he was looking. It was like months and he was not finding anything. And because I think the housing market in San Francisco was one of those times when it was really crowded or something.
Yeah.
And I went to this place called the Spiritualist Church of the Comforter, which sounds kind of hilarious. It's this funky little church in Santa Barbara. I always think of like a big puffy duvet, like the Church of the Puffy Duvet. And they have a channeler there on Wednesday nights. You can go and ask a question, and this woman will answer your question.
Wow.
For like $5. So my friend and I on a lark were like, let's go get our question answered. And in this session, I forget what my question was, but she said, okay, she said, you want to move and you want to move now. And I sort of like was like looking around like, yeah, because that wasn't my question. It was something else. And she said, but they don't know what you want. And I just kind of stopped and I was like, okay. And she said, what, like, how's the water pressure? What kind of floors? How many bedrooms? Like, they need to know what you want or they can't give you what you want.
Wow.
So, okay. I know, it was such a powerful moment. And I went home and I called my friend and I said, they don't know what we want. And he was like, what? And I said, we have to make a list. So we made this really elaborate list. It's going to be on the 3rd floor, good water pressure. We were so poor at the time. We're like, okay, 1 bedroom, and he had a little more money to spend. So it's like, okay, you get the bedroom, I'll sleep in the living room. So it was a pretty modest list. I've learned since that you should make a more like Mondo Biondo kind of list.
Yeah.
But I mean, literally, I think it was 72 hours later, we had the 3rd floor, hardwood floor, good water pressure, 1 bedroom, beautiful apartment in like Nob Hill. Like, it was just exactly what we had asked for.
That's amazing.
It was amazing, and it was such a great lesson in making things real, using that kind of tool, and then and also like, and then the Mondo Biondo of like, and we could have stretched ourselves, into what we didn't think was possible. Like, there may have been a 2-bedroom apartment
for the same price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so there's that I'd like to share, and then there's also, I think we're all highly intuitive and even psychic about some things. Like, there's a lot of information that we get if we're open to it. And I think often the things that I've manifested, like this Ben Harper thing, which I'll share in a sec, was really more of like a powerful intuition and a knowing that unfolded. So I'll back up and share the story really quick. So I was working at a clothing store at the time. I think it was during the time I was living in Nob Hill.
Yeah.
And this customer came in, and we were chatting about Ben Harper and how wonderful he is. And this is back before he was super duper famous. This is like 20 years ago.
Wow.
And I said, there's artists that you love and there's artists that you want to meet. And he is somebody I want to meet. And 2 hours later, I walked out and I was going to walk home, and I thought, no, I'm going to take the long route. I'm going to, cruise around a little bit, and walked in the opposite direction of my house, got tired, got on a bus called the Fillmore 22, and sitting next to me was Ben Harper.
No, I've heard this story like 3 times, and every time I'm like, no, it's not real, it's not real.
It was like slow motion, like that cinematic slow motion thing. I like walked on the bus and I saw him. So it wasn't like he was just suddenly sitting next to me. I saw him, and there was a seat free next to him, even though he was with his wife who was behind him, which is kind of weird. But there was a free seat next to him, and I just sat next to him, and then I tapped him on the shoulder, and I said, "Is your name Ben?" And he pulled his little earphones out, and he was like, "Yeah." Said, "I just said that I wanted to meet you 2 hours ago. Can you believe how fast the universe works?" He was like, "No." And we shared this moment of awe that was so, it was magical, let me tell you. It wasn't like, oh my God, you're so hot and I love you, which I also had feelings about, but it was like, wow, like this, we shared this moment of pure wonder, and it was just so extraordinary. And so I think about that story a lot in the realm of manifesting, because sometimes we just have a knowing that we're going to live into some future that's calling to us, whether it's like meeting someone or creating something, and it ends up on our list because we know it's meant for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I was just the whole time envisioning the people that I want to meet.
Mm-hmm.
And they come up all the time. I'm like, yeah, I need to take your class again. Oh my gosh.
It's happening in January. You can have a spot.
You know what happens when I take your classes? I've taken it twice. And like big, there's something about the collective, of that energy, the support. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, but there is something about not just knowing how to manifest or taking those actions, but doing it with a group of people that really want you to do that as well, that want you to have your dreams happen.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
It's powerful. You know, it's funny, isn't it, that sometimes it's not the people in your regular world that you want to be in that process with.
Yeah.
Like, somehow strangers can hold it in a different way with you.
Yeah. It's really true. I met so many incredible people the first time around, and I'm still friends with them. And I think I told you that. Like, it's been 3 years. And
it's amazing.
And these people are dear to me because they heard the deep, dark, the big ones, the big secrets that I was afraid to say out loud. And then we all got to witness each other taking action and doing these things in ways that are sort of contrary or new or scary, in the same vulnerable way that you do on your blog. You know, it's just a beautiful thing to witness. So I'm getting emotional. And, I want to ask you one more thing before we wrap it up. Actually, it's just a couple quick questions, if you don't mind. It's the first time I'm actually asking them. We'll see how they land.
Yeah.
Here we go. We'll see what happens.
Cool.
I'm wondering now, in your life today, gosh, I want to talk to you for an hour about the kids and having a business and all this stuff. We'll have to have a follow-up about, like, business and family.
Yeah, I'd love to.
But the question now is, today, what scares you?
What scares me? Let's see. Hmm. Well, I think that for some reason, public speaking is still this thing that looms really large for me. And now that I found this medication, I feel like, wow, this might be possible.
Yeah.
Because clearly I'm driven to do this. Clearly I'm called there, or that I wouldn't keep going back.
Right.
I think I think I'm afraid to fail. I think it's like a fear of failure, a fear of being exposed as a fraud, as someone who doesn't really have anything to offer, that kind of stuff, that like sort of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think that connects to just other ways that I'd like to play bigger in my creative life. And but I'm afraid that like, oh, it's just little old me, you know?
Yeah, I'm dealing with that right now, making this TV show. Hi.
Yes, exactly. Good for you. It turns out it's just little old us doing extraordinary things sometimes. Like that's just I'm learning, you know, because some of my friends are these really well-known, extraordinary humans, right? And it's like they're calling you crying, you know, about the same shit that we're dealing with.
Yeah,
you know?
I think that really is the key to know, and it's kind of why, I mean, it is why I created the summit that I had last year, is because I think we hold these images of perfection around people who have a book published and they're on TV shows and they have a wider reach than we do with our Facebook pages or Twitter, you know, accounts or whatever. And we think that they have somehow arrived when really they're still dealing with self-confidence and doubt and fear and all that stuff that comes up and can eat us alive, you know?
Yeah.
And so when that imposter complex comes up, and I definitely share that with you, what do you do? What tools do you use to help you move past it, beyond it, or through it, or take it with you so that you're still taking those steps towards your dreams?
Okay, so I have a new answer, like newly discovered over the last weekend. So I just did this amazing workshop with Alexandra Franzen. Who
You were there? Oh my God, I heard about it.
Oh, it was, can I say the F word? Awesome. The F word, awesome. And so one of the things that I discovered, so I think at the very beginning of the workshop, she started talking about this philosophy that says something like, if you can't put it into words, then it doesn't actually exist. It's actually not real as a concept. Like if you don't have language for it yet, then it doesn't exist for you.
Wow.
Which is sort of like a what kind of concept? But I'll give you an example. So one of the things that I really distinguished for myself over the weekend is that I'm a healer and I'm a storyteller. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily have to put that on my business card, but through that lens, my work looks completely different. And having that language totally transforms everything that I do. So, for example, if I'm a storyteller and I'm conducting a workshop, even a photography workshop, I don't have to know all of the technical mumbo-jumbo that I feel so much pressure around. Like, well, if I'm going to teach a workshop in photography, then I really have to know all this stuff. And I have to be an expert, right? Right. So there's all this stuff then that feeds into the whole imposter syndrome. Like, oh, well, I'm not good enough to teach it. I don't have an MFA. I don't know all my dials. And instead, it's like, oh, I'm a storyteller. And one of the ways that I tell stories is with photos. And one of the ways I tell stories is with words. And I've always wondered, like, okay, well, I'm not really a writer's writer. I'm not like, you know, somebody who writes every day or reads every day. And I'm not someone who knows everything about photography. So anyway, this is a very long answer to your question, but there's something about distinguishing that and having that language, like in owning, okay, so I'm a storyteller and these are the ways that I tell stories, and my stories are healing stories. Yeah. And I swear that like my head exploded because I had so much permission to be me and to do everything I do that way. It's like, oh my God, I don't have to be an expert in something else anymore. So
what I'm also hearing from the beginning of the story with Alex saying, if you haven't had it, if you can't put it in words, then it doesn't exist yet, then you're saying that not knowing the dials on the camera and all that stuff is not even it's not even an issue because it's not on the table. That's not where you're coming from. You're coming from this other place that you do own, that you do know, and they are the stories that you're writing. And that's your truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
It was such a for me.
Yeah, I'm having an explosion right now.
Good. Oh, good. Yes, it was like there was something about the language. It's like calling myself a blogger doesn't feel accurate, although I say that sometimes, like, oh, I'm a blogger.
Right.
Calling myself a photographer sounds like, okay, I can say that, but it doesn't really speak to who I am.
Right.
So there's all these ways that it's like sort of the business card or like the elevator pitch, like, what do you do?
Yeah, we had that
been
talk.
a elusive question.
Yeah, I remember having that talk about that elevator pitch and how, you know, we are interested in so many different things that don't really have labels that other people are used to hearing.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it feels like you had a moment of clarity about that piece of what is it that you do. Like just having the language for it is so empowering.
Yeah. Exactly, and it's like, what do you bring to the party no matter what you're doing? Like, what do you literally bring to the party, like to the dinner party? Like, do you bring humor?
Yeah.
Do you bring stories? Do you bring great listening? Are you someone who just really can hold space? Like, there's these like superpowers, you know, we have superpowers, and we bring them to everything that we do. Like, I'm a photographer, I'm a life coach. Like, all those words weren't actually speaking to the heart of what I do or what I aspire to do. And somehow, through this series of exercises that she did with us, I saw, oh my God, like I'm really geeked out about this storytelling thing. Like that's all I do when I have free time is listen to radio stories, and I love to tell stories, and I've been creating these storytelling dinners where I invite women who've never met each other to like share stories with each other. And so it was transformative. It was like completely blew my mind to look at my work through the lens of I'm a storyteller and a healer. And I tell stories with photos, and I tell stories with words, and I tell stories live, and I tell stories online. And that is how I do my healing work. That's how I do my creative work, and that's how I serve people. Yeah. And it's like, oh my God, I can really stand in that with so much confidence. And I don't have to be a perfect writer, and I don't have to be an expert in f-stops and shutter speeds. And I can just be me, and the people who want to be near me and want to learn from me can find me.
And that's how the fear of the imposter complex goes away. It's by owning what's real about you and knowing the language to share, you know, who you are, and getting rid of all of those labels that you're putting on yourself that make you feel afraid, that come up with all these expectations about, well, if you are this, that, and the other, then that means you have to. No, you're just being yourself, and these are the exact right words to use that express that to the world and to yourself. That's amazing. That's empowering.
Yes, exactly.
This is amazing conversation, Andrea, and I really appreciate you just showing up and sharing the truth and offering valuable tools and tips just by sharing your experience today. So thank you again for being a part of this series, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks.
Mwah.